What is going on, guys, gals, non-binary pals? It's your boy Artisan Kane. We are doing another TPL Season 2 team build preview. It is week 12, and we're going up against the flaming hot Indiana team here. Um, I believe coach's name is Matthew. He has been on a roll since coming into the league, taking over a team, and you know, he's had a lot of ground to make up. I think the team that he took over was 0-5, and since then he has led the Indiana Tracers to 5 straight wins. So that team is sitting at 5-5. So it's definitely a big threat. Nothing to take lightly here as we go into this week 12. We are currently 6-2-2. So we definitely need to keep up the pressure, keep up the momentum, get these W's as the playoff race gets tighter and tighter. Right now, as we sit, I think we're like just outside the playoff bubble. With other teams that have tiebreakers above us, and also some of these ties that we've gotten before. Those two ties are probably going to come into play with all the playoff situations as we go forward. So to start off here, we will take a look at the Indiana Tracers team. So we've got here Bronzong, Dragalge, Gastrodon, Heracross, Leafeon, Ninetales, and Wimscott. With TPL rules, that Ninetales can be either the Kanto version, which is the fire type that is showed there, but it could also be the Alolan Ninetales, which is the fairy ice type. So just doing a quick rundown on this team. First off is Bronzong. Bronzong is very strong. It's also a very good support Pokemon. A lot of things like Stealth Rock setup. It also has access to two really good abilities in Heat Proof and Levitate. So depending on what they decide to run, kind of gives it some more resistance or immunity to different moves if he decides to bring it. One interesting thing with Bronzong 2 is that it also has a access for Trick Room, which might happen because my team is actually very, very fast compared to his team. Bronzong, Gastrodon, Dragalge, those three mons in particular are very slow, less than 50 base speed. So if he decides to kind of focus on that, we really have to keep that in mind because obviously with our team, the way we're set up, we have a decent amount of speed in Hydreigon and Tentacruel and Arcanine. So we have a decent amount of speed. So if he decides to set something like Trick Room up, it can be really difficult for us to deal with it, and we'll have to either stall that out or one of the options here is I'm actually running Taunt on Vanillix to try to keep Bronzong from doing anything and kind of forcing it to use an attacking move. Next up, there is Dragalge. So, of his team, Dragalge is one of the scariest mons. Dragalge with its two stab moves in being poison and dragon type, having the stats that it has a stupid high special attack and special defense stat. So it can absorb a lot of hits and then just deal them back. Adaptability even boosts those two stab attacks even more. So we're talking about Draco Meteors and Sludge Waves that hit like an absolute truck. So the only thing that kind of holds Dragalge back is that speed tier. Like I mentioned, it's below 50. I think it's like 40 or 45. So with that speed tier, it's basically has to take a hit first. So what we want to do is we want to be put in a position where we can either Oko it or do enough damage on it that the next mon that comes in will be able to revenge kill. I definitely do expect like a Life Orb or Choice Specs type set because of the damage output that Dragalge can do. I mean, in all honesty, some of the calculations I was running, like a Specs Dragalge, a Draco Meteor, which Aegis Slash actually resists, it's still like a 2-hit KO. So, we really need to be cautious of that Dragalge, depending on what set he ends up bringing. Next up, there is Gastrodon. Gastrodon in playtesting, Gastrodon is really, really difficult to deal with. I actually had to make some changes on this team specifically for Gastrodon because of the fact that its only weakness is grass, but it is 4 times grass. Um, so, but the other thing is it has access to recover. So if we're not able to one hit KO it, it can get a recover off and either like stall out a Dynamax or something like that. We had to make a couple changes to switch that up. So what we actually have is we put Energy Ball on Primarina, we put Solar Beam on Arcanine, made Arcanine a mix set specifically to deal with Gastrodon. Also, Gastrodon has stuff like Yawn, Stealth Rocks, so it can play a very pivotal support role in that team. Stealth Rocks can be really annoying for this team, particularly since I'm not bringing anyone with heavy duty boots. So that's where Tentacruel kind of comes in with the rapid spin that we're running on it. And also Gastrodon with Yawn. Yawn is really, really annoying. It can force a lot of switches. It can put momentum back on his side very, very quickly. Since we do not have a sleep clause in this league, if he really wants to, he can put a lot of Pokemon in a position where, we're kind of playing the RNG game of, am I going to wake up this turn or not? Next up is Heracross. Heracross has definitely been the star in his team. Heracross is his kill leader by a long shot. Gut sweeper type thing with a flame orb, or even like I think it has sword stance, so like a sword stance type thing. It's pretty common. Even a choice scarf type set isn't too outside the ordinary, and because this format is a Dynamax format, Heracross is able to last a lot longer. It's able to get up things and start boosting itself with max knuckles or max airstreams, and put itself in a position to absolutely sweep from the second it hits the field. So because of that, we have a lot of our sets kind of tailored to that. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if we have a Mon that goes out there and kind of just tries to absorb a hit from Heracross right off the bat, and I'm gonna have to play the sacking game maybe, depending on how things go. But we do have Arcanine with Intimidate is awesome to try to lower that attack stat. We've got H/running King Shield specifically to lower that attack stat too if he does try to hit us with like a Mega Horn or a knockoff. In trying to hit a knockoff, he'll hit the King Shield and then he'll lower his attack stat. So stuff like that is probably the main way we're going to be able to deal with Heracross because it's such a threat. Next up, he's got Leafeon. Leafeon, being a Swords Dance Chlorophyll user, is very terrifying if it's paired with the Kanto Ninetales, which sets up the Drought and puts it in a position to go on a tear. It's got a surprisingly high attack stat, which some people don't realize, which allows Leafeon to be a sweeper, especially in a format of that allows Dynamax. So we have to be aware of that. If the sun is up, that Leafeon speed is doubled. Same thing with like a Venusaur type of set. So it could be like a Swords Dance and then immediately Dynamax after that, and try to just get off the Leaf Blaze or the Max Overgrowths and just start hitting like a truck. While we do have mons that resist grass, like Hydreigon, once it's at +2, it's still hitting very, very hard. So that's something to be aware of here. Next is the Ninetales. Like I mentioned, it could be either the Kanto or Alola version. So that kind of puts us in an interesting position in trying to predict what is coming. If the Alolan Ninetales does come, which I kind of expect a little bit more, I think that's the better set against us because he can get off an Aurora Veil and protect his team a lot more to do some damage. then that's why we have Aegislash running Brick Break. I really don't like running Brick Break on Aegislash, but it's basically I basically need to have a breaker in order to make sure that Veil doesn't go up and allow mons like Dragalge and Heracross to sweep. With that being said, it could very easily also be the Kanto Ninetales, and like I said, it could be paired with Leafeon to get that chlorophyll going and really do a whole bunch of damage. So, you know, in kind of playing this prediction game, so to speak, it's pretty tough. So we have to roll with what we're rolling with and see ends up actually what ends up actually showing up. After that, we've got Wimscott. Wimscott is one of the premier prankster mons. I absolutely love Whimsicott in doubles, but it's also really strong in this format also in singles because it's super fast, and if it's running something like a choice spec set, it hits really hard. Abusing Prankster is super cool. It has so many different moves that it can use that abuse that Prankster ability. I used it a lot in the side quest league last season. I absolutely love it. Everything from the like a switcheroo to steal items, the stuff that can lower attack, special attack like a charm or fake tears, stuff like that. Just that can really ruin a sweep. Is really useful for a mon like Whimsicott. I think if it's kind of the same thing. If he brings Ninetales Kanto, he's probably bringing Whimsicott also. But if he's bringing the Alolan Ninetales, I don't think Whimsicott plays as much of a role because he'll have the fairy typing on that other fast mon, and he might opt to bring like a Bronzong instead or something. So with that, we'll go into what I'm actually bringing. So first up, we've got Aegislash. Aegislash with Spell Tag, Max HP, Max Attack, Adamant. Like I said, we're running Brick Break in case he decides to bring the Alolan Ninetales, and we can break through the Veil setup. Swords Dance kind of helps put some offensive pressure on him. It can be a really good like late game cleaner because of that priority and the Shadow Sneak that we're running, and the Spell Tag, which gives us a little bit of boost. And then we're running King Shield. Now, generally on a Swords Dance set, I don't like running King Shield on Aegislash, but we're running King Shield there primarily to scout on Heracross if we're scouting for Earthquakes or knockoffs. And that allows us to switch in Arcanine depending on what's going on, since we are running that air balloon set. If I think he is going to be clicking EQ for whatever reason, we can switch into Arcanine. We'll have that balloon there to keep us away from the ground damage, and then we can get off a Flare Blitz and try to Oko Heracross. I think Arcanine puts a lot of pressure on him in that regard also. So we need to have Aegislash play this role for us to allow a switch in of the Arcanine. Next up, we've got Vanillux with the Never Melt Ice, Snow Warning. Potentially get up our own Veil. If he brings the Kanto Ninetales, we can kind of go back and forth on weather. So I was considering considering the Focus Sash. Because even though Vanillux has a decent amount of bulk, if we have Focus Sash, we can make sure that we get off Veil before anything else. But I really like the extra power that we get from the Nevermelt Ice, particularly on Freeze Dry and Blizzard. Freeze Dry for Gastrodon, especially if it's especially defensive. Invested Gastrodon, we need that extra punch on that Freeze Dry to do as much damage as possible. And then the Blizzard for the grass types that he has, and then the Dragalge. Yeah. We do outspeed Dragalge with this with this speed tier that we're running, to make sure we can try to get off a hard-hitting blizzard. Obviously, Dragalge, like I said, has a really high special defense stat to begin with, so it's not something that is going to be like OHKOing potential. But we definitely want to be put in a position where, like I said, we just put as much damage as we can on Dragalge. That way, something else can come in and clean up afterwards. I also mentioned Taunt before. Taunt is specifically there for mons like Dragalge, maybe even a Whimsicott, to keep it from setting up all the other mumbo jumbo that those mons like to set up. Rocks and Trick Room and all that kind of stuff. We want to be able to prevent with that Taunt. Next up is Life Orb by Hydreigon. We are running Timid max speed. That is to make sure that we outspeed Leafeon, and then obviously everything slower. Primarily Nasty Plot dual stab with Draco Meteor and Dark Pulse, Flamethrower for a bit of extra coverage, but in all honesty, we are 9 times out of 10 going to be clicking Draco Meteor or Dark Pulse. Main problem that keeps Hydreigon from doing as much as I'd like it to do are the possibility of the Alolan Ninetales as well as Whimsicott. Both of those mons outspeed Hydreigon, and can absolutely blow us back with a Moonblast. Obviously 4 times weak to Fairy. We don't want to be in on those mons. So 100% of the time, those 2 mons are going to force a switch. So for the opponent, he's going to know that. So he has to either decide, I can get a free Moonblast off on something coming in, or he can try to predict of what I'm trying to switch in and try to get some more damage off on that, or potentially try to set up, etc., etc. So that kind of puts a little bit of a damper on what Hydreigon might do. So we have to be aware of that, especially knowing what mons are available later in the game, what the opponent actually still has. Speaking of Moonblast, we're running a Choice Specs Primarina with Torrent. We have enough speed here to outspeed a Timid max speed Dragalge. If for whatever reason it is Timid max speed, he doesn't have much in the way of Fairy resist, so firing off Specs Moonblast is very nice. We've got Shadow Ball there for coverage on the Bronzong. Scald kind of just gives us that dual stab, but in all honesty, we're probably not clicking Scald unless Ninetales is in. And then finally Energy Ball. I had Flip Turn on that last slot, and during playtesting, Energy Ball ended up being a little bit better because it gives us some coverage on Gastrodon. Otherwise, if it's especially defensive Gastrodon, the Moonblast and Shadow Ball really aren't doing as much as we'd like. I think Moonblast only did like 30 something to 40%, so Gastrodon could just recover that off in all reality. So we want to put a little bit more pressure on it with the Energy Ball. Next up we have Arcanine. Like I said, we're running Air Balloon Intimidate. Kind of helps us check Heracross, particularly if Heracross is already at -1 after the King Shield hit. Intimidate will bring it down to -2. If it is Guts activated, then it'll still be -1, but it's still a lot more weaker. We have max defense and a chunk in HP, and we're 180 speed. Naive. I originally wanted to be timid, jolly, but I decided that I'll sacrifice a little bit of the special defense bulk side to make sure that all of our attacking moves are hitting as hard as possible. Particularly Solar Beam. We have Solar Beam there specifically for Gastrodon. These 3 moves kind of give us coverage on just about everything. With this speed tier, it also puts us in a decent position to do damage to just about everything. Flare Blitz, Bulldoze, and a Solar Beam. Obviously, Bulldoze and Solar Beam outside of Dynamax aren't great. Bulldoze doesn't hit that hard, but it does lower speed. And then Solar Beam being a two-turn move isn't exactly great. But in Dynamax, becoming Max Overgrowth and Max Quake is really, really good. We have Morning Sun there to give us a little bit of longevity depending on game flow. But in all honesty, we want to put as much pressure as we can with Arcanine. We want to do as much damage as we can, especially if we end up Dynamaxing Arcanine. Looking at the rest of the team, either Arcanine or Hydreigon are the biggest candidates for Dynamax. But like I said, with Hydreigon being 4 times weak to Fairy and him having a couple of potential Moon Blasters, we don't want to put Hydreigon in a position where it's still getting O-code in even after being Dynamaxed. And then finally here, we've got Tentacruel playing a support role again. It's been doing very, very well with this kind of set. We are Jolly, but with enough speed to outspeed most things on his team, which means that we have a fast knockoff user, a fast toxic spreader, which is really, really good, especially against mons like Dragalge and Gastrodon that could have things like Gastrodon could have like leftovers and whatnot, which would be really annoying. Dragalge having, like I said, I kind of expect like a Life Orb or Choice Specs type thing. If we can get that away from it, it puts us in a better position. It weakens the opponent. It really helps cripple some of these mons and put us in a better position. If for whatever reason Heracross decides to switch in on Tentacruel, for example, if we knock it off, we might be able to knock off a Flame Orb before it gets the chance to have its guts activated, which is really, really important in the late game. And then we have a Rapid Spin there. Stealth Rock, like I said, hazards are kind of annoying for this team because I'm not rocking any heavy duty boots users. So we want to make sure we have Rapid Spin there in case Bronzong or Gastrodon are trying to set up hazards on us. And then Dragalge has T-Spikes, I think, also. So Tentacruel can help clean that stuff up. So with that, that is our Week 12 preview here. A little bit more in-depth this week than we have been. And that is because, in all honesty, this team that we're facing is really hot, and we need to make sure that we're in a position to do as much damage as possible, put a bunch of pressure on the Indiana Tracers to give us a better position going into the later part of the season here. Like I said, playoffs are approaching, so we got to put ourselves in a position to try to make it. So we'll see how this week goes, and hopefully you guys will check out the video once it's posted. Thanks, y'all.